This is Flat Out Agility, an Australian agility podcast. I'm Grace. In this episode, I'm joined by agility handler, judge, and manager of Top Dog Events, Simon Innes. I met Simon recently at an agility trial he was judging at in Coffs Harbour. Simon lives in Perth, WA, and today we're going to talk about his experiences as a handler and judge, but also his event management platform, Top Dog Events. So to start us off, Simon, can you tell us about your experience in agility?
Yeah, sure. I started training in 2007. I had a golden retriever named Dexter, and I wanted to try something different. So we went down to the local club and started from there. Since then, I've had 3 different competing dogs. I had a border collie named Pippa, and my current dog is a working golden retriever called Nelson, who's quite an athlete. He's a lot more sporty than I would have expected from a golden retriever, and absolutely loves agility. So all 3 of my dogs managed to get JDM titles at some part of their career. And that's pretty much it from a handler perspective.
So when did you start judging?
I finished the judging course in 2015 and didn't actually get my full qualifications till 2017. We had a really large cohort of judges in that course. And WA being WA, there was limited opportunities for us to do our novice training under other judges. So yeah, it took nearly 2 years for that. I got into judging because Nadine and I had 6 dogs when we got together, and they were all within 4 years of each other. So they retired. When the first one retired, the rest of them weren't too far behind. So we had a large period where we had no active dogs, and we really wanted to stay involved in the sport. So that seemed like a good outlet for it.
How does judging compare to sort of being a competitor?
It's very different. Both of them can be extremely nerve-wracking, but I tend to treat them as very separate activities. They're both my favorite way to be involved in the sport, although you can't really have 2 favorites, but I guess I love them equally. I really enjoy judging because you get the best seat in the house to watch one of what I think is the greatest sports. And I really, really enjoy seeing teams have a crack at the challenges that I put down. And I love seeing them succeed. I think one of the greatest things is watching somebody walk away from one of your courses having had a really, really good time. But competing, it's nerve-wracking as well because it's just you, the dog, and the course. And I guess I always want to feel like I need to do the best thing by my dog. So it's more about, how I communicate with him and how we manage it. But just that challenge, and also when we succeed, even if we don't succeed, if we have a nice run, that's just a rush that I really, really like.
And how would you say the sport has changed since 1, you started handling, and 2, you started judging? Because there's a bit of a gap there too.
Yeah, you see a lot of changes, mainly around equipment. I guess stuff gets safer and more appropriate as time goes on. We were having a chat a couple of weeks ago about the olden days, which feels a bit weird saying that because I don't think I'm that old. But anyway, when people were sharing photos like what the old tires used to look like, and when we had jumps that were just stakes and the little metal circle things that held tunnels down before tunnel bags came along. As a sport, I feel it's gotten a lot faster over time. One of the joys of recording a lot of runs is being able to go back and see how different everything is. And we were cleaning out a filing cabinet here a while ago, and there was a bunch of old printed courses we had from back when we did the course originally, the judging course, so like 10 years ago. And looking at some of the lines and whatnot in this course was extremely cringy. Like, it was, at the time, it was fine to put down and, people managed it. But now that the sport has got faster and there's a lot bigger emphasis on safety, a lot of that emphasis sort of falls onto the judge to be able to put a course together that is safe and can handle, a border collie that runs at 200 miles an hour and still managing safe contact entries. When we started judging, there usually seems to be a topic I find in agility that's contentious or people talk about a lot. And when we started judging, that was a big discussion on contact entries. So that cohort of judges, we put a lot of stock into how or what our contact entries look like, and how they're going to be handled from small dogs to big dogs that'll overshoot lines, that sort of stuff. And you see things like that now. This sort of concept is being built into course design software. So Smarter Agility seems to be the most popular one now, and you can put these little arcs or like cones rather on your contacts, so you can get a rough idea of where you shape your dog's lines, and you can see whether they're going to land in this like safety cone to be able to take the contact at speed. So yeah, a lot of safety, and it's just everything seems to come back to it. So now I think the most recent topic's probably been tunnels and tunnel entries. And I mean, we saw that as well in the rule change, that they've made it a bit more definitive about the bends you can put in it and the amount of tunnel bags and that sort of thing. So it's ever evolving, but always for the better, I think.
So you've been involved in handling as a competitor, and you've been a judge, and Nadine said that you were instructing as well. So you've done all parts of it, but you're also now in the event management space, for trials. So how did that come about?
So that came about, gosh, it would have been 2013. I think Nadine took on the job of trial secretary for the club I was president for at the time. And I remember the first trial that she did, the week before closing, she was just inundated with envelopes of people mailing in entry forms and checks, and the occasional person would staple a $20 note to an entry form. So that was the only way we had to enter back then. And she spent so much time on it. It was, I remember Friday nights not long before the trial, and she's printing out numbers, and there's constantly people getting in touch saying, "Oh, my dog's moved here. Oh, you've spelt this incorrectly." And it was a lot more effort than I felt that it needed. So being a bit of a super nerd, I wanted to try and make that process easier. So I started with an extremely macro-laden spreadsheet where she could at least enter all the entries into a spreadsheet, press a button, and it would generate, split them out between classes and help generate catalogs. And then that evolved to being able to put in results. So you just have a sheet where she just go catalog number, result, press a button, and generate quality cards. Obviously, there's still the manual entry part, which is prone to human error. So the next step was to make it all web-based and let competitors do their own entries. So in 2018, I released what was called OARS back then, or the Online Agility Registration System. I'm not very well known for my creativity, so that was as good as it got. WA picked that up. So it started as a tool just for the club I was part of, and then other clubs wanted on board, and then obedience clubs jumped on as well. Then we moved out to Tricks. And then in 2022, I spent a lot of effort on a rebrand and making it look like a real website rather than my first web project. And we renamed it to Top Dog Events. And that was when I registered as a business as well. And that was just prior to the 2023 WA Nationals opening for entries. So that was sort of my big showcase.
And so how did that first showcase go?
Pretty good. It was kind of humbling in a way because there was obviously a lot of people signing up. So it's when you have a lot of people trying to do something new, there's obviously a lot of teething issues. And so I had plenty of emails of how do I do this? How do I do that? For the most part, it went pretty well because I like to think that, I spent a lot of time trying to make it intuitive and have paths that just kind of make sense. but also with the amount of Eastern States competitors as well, things are a little bit different to what they were used to as well, which was quite interesting.
What kind of things?
Well, when it came down to the actual trial, everybody found it quite amusing how many numbers they were given, which we couldn't understand that. So I saw posts on Facebook where people just had these large stacks of numbers, and we were like, well, what's wrong with that? That's just how things are done. And it turns out that Trials Over East had been running one number per dog for the entire weekend. And we're like, oh, that makes sense. But I guess just because of the typical size of trials over here, it wouldn't normally matter because you'd have I suppose 2 to 8 numbers for a day, and it didn't really matter.
So I guess sort of launching at nationals is useful in that way because you're instantly getting a national perspective rather than just, the local perspective.
Yeah, it was also good because I had trial secretaries from over east who looked at it and said, oh, this is quite interesting. So there's a couple of people came over and actually gave demos to them while we were there. And I had one lady she took me through her current process and talked me through her pain points. And I was like, that's a good idea. We could do that. And yeah, there was somebody from the New South Wales Agility Committee that got in touch, and she wanted to trial it despite everybody saying, oh, what we're currently doing is fine. And she had a lot of suggestions about the admin side of things, which was it's all stuff I'd never would have thought of. For example, we still did everything on paper. We'd take the sheets back to the office and somebody would type the results in. So I had a nice little data entry. Yeah, you can almost do it with one hand, typing in catalog number, time, faults, press enter, do the next one. Where as a concept that was completely new to me at the time was people entering results at ringside. And that was a real game changer for me. I spent a lot of time then putting together a screen that's essentially a run sheet, the same way you'd see it in the catalog where somebody can click on it on an entry, enter the results and do it. Then the second that they were finished, the office could print the cards, and that was a big shift in the way trials were run over here, which was kind of cool.
What would you say are the biggest benefits of using a system like this? I know there's obvious answers, but what's your pitch of why to switch to?
I think if you look at the origin story, my whole MO is making life easier for trial secretaries. I want to take the tedious, repetitive, and stressful tasks out of it and make them automatic. The thing I probably biggest on is no data rehandling, because the more that somebody changes something, the more prone to human error it is. And my favorite feedback is when I get trial secretaries who have run a trial and they get back to me and said, oh my God, that was so easy. Thank you so much. And I just love that. I had one trial secretary message me. She was asking me a question about how to update something after a trial. And I told her, and she said, oh, that was cool. I did it from my iPad in my bed when I got home. It's like, that's cool. That's the future right there. And also, another sort of benefit that I found was when we started showing live results, and people would check it on their phone, in the middle of the day, and they'll say, hang on a second, I was supposed to get a quali here, and they can go up to the office, they can correct it, there and then. We'd have to wait till, there used to be a big rush after presentations where people would say, I didn't get my quali, or I shouldn't have got this quali. So there's a lot more, I guess, data quality going into it early on, which is nice.
What have been the sort of major lessons? I mean, we've covered the Nationals in WA in 2023, but are there any other major sort of lessons that shaped how Top Dog runs today?
Yeah, it's all just been an evolution of things and taking on extra disciplines. So I guess the way the community works over here, I was involved with scent work before scent work was a thing in WA. So the clubs who started to organize it were already working with me for obedience type stuff. So we jumped on that train early, and then that started to evolve and got picked up elsewhere. And then, so a big thing for me is I'm not hugely creative. I like to build stuff, but I don't often come up with the ideas. So a lot of things that go into Top Dog are community suggestions. So, for an example, the whole ballot feature came about because that was the way they had to do things in Victoria for scent work. So here they would cap the numbers and that's it. When it's full, it's full. So they needed a facility to be able to take all these entries and then randomly select who's in for a particular trial and that sort of thing. So that got built because somebody needed it, and now that gets used everywhere. Different sports have decided, oh, this is actually a really good idea. Let's do that.
So that's cool because it is you and you actually are in these sports. You have that perspective of one, you're getting the community feedback, but then because you're not just sort of an outsider applying stuff here and there, like you can immediately go, oh yeah, I see why you would want that, and then apply it.
Yeah, it's been quite handy, and especially in the early days, because this all started before, like during my non-competing time. So when I was at trials locally for judging, or just because I was down there, actually sitting in the office while people were doing stuff was really cool to see how they are utilizing it. And you can always pick up on from a process of how somebody goes to click to get to a certain menu. It's like, oh, well, maybe I didn't make the buttons that obvious because you can just go this way. Small things like that as well was kind of cool. One of my favorites was I went over to New South Wales to compete in the nationals there in 2024, and the Dogs New South Wales Agility Committee have always been big fans of mine, so they were all using it. And there was a issue we had with some results. So I took my laptop into the office, and there was 3 people there all smashing away with results. They had Top Dog up on these big monitors, and it was like a little Top Dog war room. It was kind of cool to see. So yeah, I really, really enjoy seeing trial secretaries actually put it to work and get benefit out of it.
And how has working on this platform changed how you experience these dog sports, if at all?
I don't think personally it really has, apart from the fact that I have to do my own entries now. Back in the day when it was paper-based, Nadine was the only one with a checkbook, so she'd just do all the entries and I'd just rock up on the day. So yeah, I don't think my own experience has been affected, but I also have the expectation of what's going to happen because, I developed the process. So one thing I do see is more people getting involved at a club level. Like back in the day, finding someone who would be a trial secretary was quite difficult, and you needed quite a thick skin and the time to spend on it. So I found other people putting their hands up to do it now because it's not as difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's more automated, which is definitely easier because you don't have to create the catalogs. You don't have to, even just for us, when I first started helping out the club, you would have to manually make, catalogs and get the score sheets and everything. And now it's just kind of all automated.
Yeah, well, that's another thing over here. I obviously had a format for the catalogs. It drops it out in an Excel spreadsheet because that's the best way to fit everything on, and people were just using that. As soon as we went over east, people are putting quite a bit of effort in making these gorgeous PDF files. Like it's almost like this. The data I contribute to it is a side note because they've got all their sponsorship stuff, a bit about the club. I really enjoy seeing that, and yeah, kind of seeing the role that Top Dog gets to play in that sort of thing.
And I suppose the difference for you in your experience of trials now is that if you're there, you're kind of tech support.
Yeah. I've quite often at WA trials, I'll get summoned over the PA system when someone has a question, and people will come up to me with their phones and say, "Hey Simon, what about this?" And yeah, it's just life now.
Are there some new features or innovations that you're really excited about that are happening?
Uh, there's so many. I have a list that's just never ending. I've been working on a club memberships module for the longest time, but it's a massive chunk of work. So I get distracted by shiny and new things. So I dart around the place all the time. But in my queue, I've got things like wait lists. So rather than using like a balloting type system or just cutting people off, I've had quite a few requests for, allowing people to jump on a wait list. Then if somebody withdraws, next person will get an email. They've got 24 hours to respond and that type of thing. I've been working on mobile notifications, and I guess the concept of channels by class or by ring, where somebody in the office or at the desk can sort of write messages to say, we're height changing now, and then everybody who's subscribed to that will get notifications. That's going pretty well, but I think Apple devices are going to give me some grief there. And also a concept around discount codes and club credit. There's some things where we only refund payments up to a point, but a club still wants to say, here's a free entry for something. And I would like to be able to contribute to things like clubs raffles and saying, here's a $50 Top Dog voucher that you can go and use. So yeah, things like that. It's never ending.
What do you think is a small feature that users might not realize can actually make a big impact? Maybe some sort of feature that trial secretaries aren't. We could do it from two perspectives. From the event management side, is there something that maybe not everybody's utilizing to its full capability, or on the entrance side, perhaps?
Well, it's funny. There was a bit of a chat about this on Agility New South Wales page this week. One of the trial secretaries made a little post about, a did you know sort of post. So since moving to when we introduced Stripe as a payment platform years ago, so one of the biggest draw cards for that was the ability to set up self-service refunds. So if somebody cancels their entry prior to a trial closing, they'll get a refund. So it's a two-pronged thing. I think it works well for lots of people, because for competitors, they don't have to go and harass a trial secretary and saying, I want to pull out of this, send me my money back. But it happens quite a lot. I think people are probably more likely to not just let it go now, because they do have the ability to get their money back. They don't feel like they're burdening anybody by doing so. And then on the trial secretary side of things, they're not getting harassed by people to send the money. And because it's all linked to credit card transactions, they don't have to go and process direct deposits for people for $10 and that type of thing. So I think that's had a bigger impact than people can see, because it's very much behind the scenes.
Yeah, that would make a real difference, because then you don't have to answer correspondence, you don't have to process it. Yeah, for the trial secretary particularly, it's a lot of workload that's removed. So Top Dog Events must collect a lot of data. I'm assuming that you're a bit of a I'm just going to make the guess that you're a data nerd. Are there any interesting trends you can let us in on?
So funny story. It do collect a lot, and I used to look at it a lot back in the day, but as I got more and more, I did less and less with it. I guess I've been talking to somebody over here that wants to dig deep and grab height, time, and like course length data, so we can do this like speed analysis of dogs over different heights and different levels. But that hasn't become more than an idea just yet. When we had the height change that came with the last rule review, I did spend quite a bit of time looking at how many dogs are in current heights and how many were going to move, which was quite interesting. And I have been logging data as to people who have opted to move up, but I haven't actually gone back to look at it since that started. Because there are a few people who jumped on it like day one. They're like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna keep my dog in the height they're currently in. But I guess the interesting here, it's probably not that you could almost predict it. But the 600 high class took the biggest hit in terms of it. This is only for dogs who are registered on Top Dog events and actually have their measured heights in. Because I know not all states require a measured height for agility entry. They could just say they get measured and they say you're 500, you're 600. So I couldn't do much about them. But from the dogs that had heights in, there was just over 50% of 600 dogs moved down to the 500 high class. The next highest for that was 500s moving into 400 was 33%, which is obviously going to be a lot more dogs because it's a much bigger height class. But yeah, 600s got absolutely decimated. And we see that here in trials. There's only now like 1 or 2 dogs in 600.
Yeah, that's crazy. 50% is much higher than I would have expected. But when I think about it, I mean, the dogs that are going to be naturally taller now in the new categories are probably the less likely type of dog to do agility. So that does kind of make sense if you think about it.
Yeah. So in Western Australia, the dogs that we see doing it are we've got a German Shepherd, Swiss Shepherd, and then the others are a couple of dogs that have opted to stay in 600. I was tempted to do so, but started training at 500 and my dog just seemed to take to it. He jumps very, very efficiently, so we're getting a bit more speed now, and I feel he's got a bit more confidence doing other bits and pieces like, send out backer jumps and threadles. He seems to do them a lot nicer at 500, so we just stuck with it.
I mean, we don't have a lot of trailers, but it is true that now that you say that, technically half have moved from 6 to 5 because there was 4. and now 2 of them have moved down and 2 of them have stayed in 600. So your platform is pretty big and important for, making, like we've talked about, things run better, functionality of trials and all that sort of thing. But what kind of other contributions are you hoping that Top Dog Events can make to agility or to other dog sports?
As part of the design process, I hadn't really planned for, what are we going to do outside of the stuff that we provide. But I mean, the original aim of the platform was to reduce time and stress for trial secretaries above all else. But there was updates I did towards the end of last year, which was the dog profile. And I wanted to sort of keep that give people the ability to have a central hub to store their dog's achievements. You've got the ability, you can set your dog's profile to public and share that around, and you can set it to list just your qualities, so anyone will see it, will get a nice picture of your dog and a list of all its qualifications and titles and whatnot. And I see people on social media when they're making here's my weekend wrap up posts. You always see a nice little green screenshot with some of their results. It has, first place in this, and people get really excited seeing their results online. So I sort of feel that's a nice little unexpected contribution that the platform's made, which I really like.
And do you think that this kind of tech changes the culture a bit because of those kinds of things that are, beyond? I guess also this applies to the trial secretary question. Like, you've made things easier for trial secretaries as your aim. I mean, that would surely change the culture because, like you said, so now more people are stepping into these roles. So I guess the answer is yes, but your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think the first big thing is that it puts the onus of the entries and the entry correctness back onto the competitor. So it's not now up to the trial secretary to make sure everything's correct. And as a result, you'll find people don't scramble as much to make last minute changes. So, trial secretaries the day before trial might get a message to say, I entered JDM, but it was supposed to be JDX. And nowadays you get tough luck because you've had, an entire month to correct this and you're just noticing now that's not my problem. I'm sure people aren't really that mean. That was just a hypothetical example.
Well, I guess the follow on from that is what responsibility do you think that, Top Dog Events plays in shaping where dog sports are going?
I guess it's based on same sort of thing. If we go back to trial secretaries spending less time doing, some of these longer tasks. They get more time to think about other things. So I will get requests for features that I never would have thought of, and it might just make one person's life easier. We'll take the electronic check-in that I did just recently was from a local club that runs sprint dog trials, and they have a big responsibility to make sure everybody's there because they've got people 100 meters apart with a list. So they need to make sure that they're updating correct because the person 100 meters away doesn't know that the dog coming down didn't show up. So they are big on checking in. So I set something up now that someone comes to the office, they'll select it from a list, say, yep, checked in, and then their entries will appear on the list. So they wait till check-in time's finished, then print out their lists and run them out to the stewards out there. So they've got a fully correct list, like at the time of the trial, which is not something I ever would have thought of. But now this is being picked up by other clubs that think is a good idea for keeping an eye on who's there or not and doing early scratchings. So I think in terms of shaping stuff is allowing clubs to do things the way they've always done them, but give them the option to do something else. So have them adopt if they want. So I'm not trying to force people to do things in a certain way. I want to empower them to be able to make their own selections. So you'll find when you're creating a trial, there's probably like 3 times the amount of questions you get on the little creation wizard than the video will show, because I did the video 2 years ago and now there's all these extra bits and pieces. But I obviously don't want to visually burden people with all these buttons that they're not going to use. So, try and hide the features that they're not interested in, and be flexible and let people do things at their own pace. And it just seems to be shaping itself, which is really cool.
And what would you say that people underestimate about running a platform like this?
I think for the most part is people don't realize that Top Dog Events is run purely by me and it's a side project for me. So I still have a 9 to 5 job that I do. So my time that I get to spend on this is quite limited. And then I have the juggle between developing new features, fixing bugs that people have found, dealing with help and info requests from clubs and support messages from people. So I could have an entire evening that's, a few hours spent doing admin bits and pieces, and I haven't actually had a chance of writing a single line of code that day. And although it was productive because it's moving people's inquiries and bits and bobs along, it doesn't feel very productive to me. I don't feel like I'm doing much if I'm not producing new stuff, which I don't know if that's the right attitude to have, but I've got a lot that I want to get done and limited time in which to do it. One of my favorite things though is when I do get inquiries from people and they say, "Oh, hey team, can someone please take a look at blah?" Like they use the system and instantly think that it's being run by a team of people. That gives me a little grin. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different tasks in the background that I will work on. It's not just replying to social media posts and answering emails. This is going to be a strange segue, but last year, towards the end of last year, we actually had a train line open in my suburb. So my commute to work is about 45 minutes on the train. So I will sit in the corner with my headphones on and get my laptop out, and that's given me an extra hour and a half of an evening to spend on Top Dog stuff, which is quite nerdy, but I feel like I get quite a bit more done in that time, which is nice.
What would you say is the best or just your favorite thing about having done this, having been able to contribute to dog sports in this way?
I love seeing it being used, and I guess the networks for me, it's created, within the sport and I guess across disciplines as well, with other people. So I can use the recent Coffs Harbour trial as an example. I got to meet, 2 or 3 people who are trial secretaries for clubs that use Top Dog, and I got to meet Barry and Sandy, who they use Top Dog entry data to feed into their system. So they have a process that they run at trials, and so we've done a bit of work together via email, but actually getting to meet people was nice. I wouldn't really know anything about things like scent work and sprint dog because I don't actually compete with it. So I love learning about it and seeing how other sports do stuff. And yeah, just watching all of these things sort of center around my platform. You'll catch me sometimes if I'm sitting in front of a computer on the weekend and there's trials running. I'll jump on and watch the live results stream just because, like, well, check this out. I've seen results from a event across the other side of the country running on my platform, and it's quite humbling when the whole reason I created this was to make my wife's life easier, and now I'm assisting people across the country. It's just I absolutely love it.
But the irony there is you've made your wife's life easier and yours harder.
Yeah, and she'll tell you the same thing. It does take a lot of my time, but it's a real passion project for me. I've developing software and just programming in general has been a hobby of mine for a very long time, and having something that I can sink my teeth into and it evolves and people are actually using gives it purpose, which gives me purpose, which is just a constant source of inspiration. It's really good.
Well, I think I can confidently say from everybody in agility that uses Top Dog that we very much appreciate your contribution.
No, thank you. I like hearing stuff like that. The yeah, pat on the backs are not reasons why I do it for, but I do enjoy the praise. I'll be honest.
Thank you so much for giving me your time today and coming onto the show. I've really enjoyed learning more about Top Dog events.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
This has been Flat Out Agility. Be kind to dogs.